questions. Mate, you getting late for the questions. It needs to be organic. This is my quote, so you don't have to listen to this.
Why do you get quotes? I want quotes.
Because I'm the intro guy. I'm the guy who starts.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who steers the conversation.
We'll fucking throw some quotes.
I wrote a whole bunch of notes and then I forgot my book.
Oh shit. Alright. Well, we might as well just start it.
If I just yell really loud, can you hear me?
You gotta come closer, bro. Move over.
How close?
Like
This
closer,
close.
like right next to me.
Like we're twins?
Yeah, we're twins. Our heads all pushed together. We're actually the same person.
Cross swords.
Alright. You nervous?
A little bit.
It's pretty...
Wait, Ty, you can explain it.
What? My phone?
Well, phones face down is a sign of someone you can't trust.
No, phone's face down because I'm not wanting to be distracted, mate. You're distracted right now. See, he's on his phone right now. Distracted. Why are you scrolling? He's scrolling. He's right there. All right.
What if I got to message him about you?
Yeah, mate. Hey, do you know what Tyler's talking about?
I don't understand what he means.
What does he mean? This is a big word, bro.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Do you want to go surfing, bro?
Can we start? This is like...
This is why I wasn't meant to be here.
This is why I'm not giving you the mic, mate. I'll restrict you the access. No, right. Let's do this. Welcome to the Unbound Unplugged podcast. This will be episode 31. Today we're going to be joined by Byron, and Byron's going to be our special guest for today. And we're going to run through an episode about ego and unraveling the power and pitfalls of self-identity. We have a bit of a quote to start off this podcast. Being good at what you do is partly about competence, but not exclusively. Two other things matter. Reliability, you do what you say and you're going to do it on time as expected, and enthusiasm, you're excited to work on this problem. Skills matter, but in many cases, it's your reliability or attitude that separates you from others. So starting with you, Michael, today, we're gonna talk about a bit about ego. What do you believe your pitfalls are when it comes to your own personal ego, and how you would describe yourself when it comes to getting outside your comfort zone?
My pitfalls to probably start off with would be basically thinking that everyone has been through the same things that you've been through, or they've had the same life experiences, and then making those judgments and forgetting that everyone is exposed to different things at different times in their life, and sometimes you are going to come across individuals who just aren't aware, and that's okay. If you are someone, if you look at like the political space, if you understand that, you need to understand that majority of the population aren't in touch with any of that. They're not, and that's fine. It's okay for them not to be involved in that, and you shouldn't get angry at that. You should understand, okay, that's just not something they're interested in. Maybe we just don't start that conversation, and you don't need to force your opinion on them.
Fantastic. Heading over to our guest over there. He's sitting nice and quietly. He's actually looking really fancy today. And for our Ego podcast, this is not the attire we'd normally see Byron in. So Byron, from you, tell us a summarized version of what it's like to be Byron.
Like starting with work or
Everything.
right? Well, with me, I suppose one of the biggest things, especially lately, is just very busy with work, life, friends, family, just everything in general. It's a very high stress environment. But that's where it's like, I suppose where you talk about the ego, you have to slow things down and try to remember that like that sort of environment can be quite toxic, and to slow down and understand that it's important to slow down, and that being busy isn't always necessarily good. So I think that's like a pretty big one, and making time for everyone and everything instead of just focusing on the hustle, the grind. Like being at the gym 3 hours a day is probably not important if you're not an athlete. I've been caught up in that and work like environment, trying to work out too much, and then having those conversations with yourself and saying you're not an athlete and realising that you're not going to be one, and that you're trying to do it for fun, I suppose, is a pretty big one that I've learnt lately. I had to have those conversations with Michael and a few other members of the gym, like me and Jamin have talked about it a fair few times, like being here for too long and stuff like that when you don't really need to be. But like, yeah, you just got to try to keep things fun, I suppose, and that just sort of helps with all the outside stresses. We took up like surfing and stuff like that to try to slow the mind down, and it really sort of helps when you're in the hustle and grind of it all, and you get in that like that toxic grind culture, And then you're just putting too much pressure on yourself, really, and it's sort of unhealthy. It's very easy to slip into when you constantly want more, because it's human nature. We always want more. You get, like, the goals keep moving, you keep moving. It's very hard to try get out of that when it's your personality to keep wanting more, whether it's healthy or not, whether it's work, family, friends, wanting more hours in the day, etc. So I think it's important to slow down.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things we talk about a lot, but we're hyper aware, so we'll have those conversations and we'll realize very quickly when we're going in the wrong direction. So instead of it being a year, instead of it being 2 years where you're not present in anything because you're so focused on things that are in the future or things that are in the past, and you've got too much going on, so you're just not in the conversations you're actually having at the current time. Our advantage is we can kind of bounce off each other. And we spoke about it during the week. We spoke about surfing. Like, surfing for us, we've got to get back in the water. And it's like, why? Well, there's no distractions. You can't take your phone out. We don't use Apple Watches. We don't give in to any of those things that now give us that day-to-day, those distractions while we're out there. It's just out there for 3 to 4 hours, just you, just the surfboard, just other people and nature, which is really good for us to reset and slow down.
I've had a bit of an experience myself with, especially recently, with what you were saying about, training like a normal person and not like an athlete. In many cases, what I'm doing in my powerlifting experience doesn't require as much time as what CrossFit does, which is very odd because a lot of the times you're used to spending hours and hours in the gym. There's so much to work on. Monostructural work doesn't take 5 minutes. It's like hours of just sitting there on zone 2. So even having that mindset for myself personally and having to really back off my actual CrossFit training, sometimes I get that bit of like an ego hit where it's like, wow, if I was to do a class workout, I probably wouldn't win anymore because my cardio just isn't in the same position. Like, I would do well because I still have all that background strength and skills, but like I would expose myself to potentially not being the best. And that's going to be something that is new for me, because generally for the last, 4, 5, 6 years in CrossFit, I was always better than the average because I invested those hours, because I believed I was an athlete. I'm still an athlete, but just not in the same modality. And sometimes it can be hard when you look at yourself and you're like, wow, I used to be so much fitter, or like I used to be able to row at this pace and now I'm sitting at this pace and it hurts to row and cardio sucks more. But like you said, it's like, it's the fun about it. And I especially try to find as much fun in CrossFit as I can, because like I said, I don't do it professionally anymore. I do it recreationally, and it's finding that little bit of balance between that and being okay with not being the best version of yourself in everything. Like, you put all your money into one little basket, but then like you've got to be like, oh, I can't be good at everything. I can't be that one dude who just walks around like fucking 6-pack abs, like climbing Mount Everest and then like having a successful business at the same time. But before CrossFit, you did PLC. Yep. And you said yourself that you were one of the fittest athletes at PLC. So coming into CrossFit and changing from being the best to potentially being at the bottom, what was your approach to overcome that adversity, the adversity of not being as good as what you once were?
Honestly, it's probably a little bit different for myself because I chase that. I don't shy away from challenges ever, and like I always knew that was always a conscious decision. So when I originally the only reason I got into PLC was to get back on the dirt bike, because I used to race motocross. So I was 110 bodybuilding, needed to get down to like 90 to get back on a bike to be fit fast. So I went to PLC, got pretty good at that, fit. Then I was like, this is boring, there's no challenges, and I was like, well, Unbound's next door. That's going to be really hard, so let's do that. So it's like, and I'm very comfortable with going from top to bottom, like I always have been. Like, it happened with me from with work. So I went from being qualified chippy, running my own business in Brisbane, and then there was a bit of a downfall at a certain time. So I actually went and started oil and gas drilling out in the mines and stuff like that. So again, went from the top, went to the bottom, went to the top, then quit like mid-COVID, started the business back up. Back to the top, back to the bottom, back to the top again. So that sort of adversity I love, because I've learned so much as a person through it. So when it comes to Unbound, it was good because it's like you realise with CrossFit, like you could probably train it the rest of your life, you're never going to be the best, like ever, because it keeps getting harder. You can always be better, you can be fitter, you can be faster, you can be stronger. So that sort of challenge is like, it's so addictive. Like I think you hear that from everyone that does CrossFit, especially who I've talked to. And that's what it is, like it is so addictive. So you're like, oh no, like I'll never be that guy that trains 3 hours a day. Then you're like, huh, shit, I am. And then
it very quickly happens.
Yeah, and then you start to journal, you're trying to figure out like everything you need to do, you're trying to fit it in, like you're trying to build up, and you see if you put in the work, like you slowly see that process pretty quick. I've been doing it 6 months now, and I love it. Like I'll do it as long as I can. Like I'm the healthiest I've ever been, the happiest I've ever been, the fittest I've ever been, strongest I've ever been. Like it's such a good thing, and that adversity of not always being the best. So I think that's like what's good about Unbound. Like so Monday you have like a certain member of like 4:30 class or whatever will win Monday, a certain person will win Tuesday, a certain person will win Wednesday. Like that athlete's not going to win every single day because CrossFit's so varied, like through running, rowing, echo bike, gymnastics, like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So it's good, like you stick to your strengths, but then you also always humbled on like a Wednesday. I always get humbled in snatches or like a gymnastic workout. I always get humbled, but then it's a running workout I really enjoy. Or like a low skill but high lung capacity where you can push. I like those sort of workouts, but you also get addicted to the ones you're bad at because you're like, okay, that's what I need to work on. So yeah, I don't know, the adversity of all that I really like, and I like the process and the journey is probably the most important thing. And it's something I've learned with business and fitness is that's what you have to enjoy. You got to stop thinking, you got to have your end goals, but they're not necessarily very important because you need to be present, enjoy the now. So that process of grinding with your friends, doing EMOMs after classes, getting there early to stretch, like all that sort of stuff, that's the fun stuff. You catch up with your mates, how's work, you stretch, and then you get in class and you do some EMOMs, laugh around, talk shit. That's like the most important things. That's how I've gotten close with everyone at Unbound. It's been one of the best things, made a lot of great friends. So
if you do it right, the results are relevant and you still get the fulfillment that result was inherently meant to give you anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you do fall short.
Yeah, and like I think like everyone just builds you up in this sort of community. Like when you make your friends and stuff, everyone is always very quick to help one another. So that's another like good thing about it all.
100%. And I have a quote here that kind of really sums up what you just said about I guess being okay with working on your weaknesses. And it's ego isn't arrogance, it's comfortability and the inability to expose weakness or incompetence. So a lot of people who have ego aren't necessarily the best at the thing that they're doing, but they're good enough where they're going to be comfortable and they're not willing to put themselves in a position where they're not going to be the best or they're going to show some form of incompetence or weakness. So it's interesting to see and talk about your experience with PLC and being one of the top performers there, to come to an environment like our gym, especially at that 4:30 class, which is what we would call our more competitive class, and then just be like, oh crap, like there's a lot I need to work on. And that mindset would be good for a lot of people to have, but people just they can't get out of that sticking point. So I guess my question to you, Byron, and to summarize almost this entire podcast is, what would your advice be to someone who is at the top of their game and potentially looking for that bit more of a challenge, but are struggling with the idea of having to go back to the bottom again?
I think it's maybe a little bit harder because it's sort of someone's character. There's a lot of people that don't like tough things, and a lot of people that don't understand that hard things make you a good person. The people that don't chase hard things are never going to get very far in life or be satisfied, I suppose, because they back away because they're scared of failing, I suppose. But so like, just going back a little bit, but with joining Unbound, like I was doing like grit classes, CrossFit classes, 5 a.m, 6, 3:30, 5:30, like 6:30, I did all of them. Found out 4:30 was like a pretty competitive class, and I stayed there because I was like, shit, I can learn the most from these guys. Back then there was a lot of people in the 4:30 class that like I could watch, and I just stayed there, and you could just it elevates you when you, like that quote, if you, like you're the fifth of the four friends or whatever, how that goes, but like it's so true. If you're around people like that will build you up. but it also builds your confidence up because you're around those sort of people. So I think like finding those harder things or doing stuff that scares you will always elevate your confidence and your competence. Essentially, that's what's always happened to me anyway, and that's what I found with joining Unbound is I've only gotten better. Like lots of people have said, I've come out of my shell, like happier. You see all these things because it's the people you're around. You surround yourself with good people that genuinely care about you and all that sort of stuff. Like you're always going to get better.
Yeah, and from an outsider looking in, you definitely have a higher risk tolerance for adversity than the average person. But for people listening, I don't know if you've picked up on it, but there's still plenty of comparison going on here. It's just in a healthy way. And I think that's where most people get it wrong. They look at comparison and they go, it's unhealthy. I compare myself to someone on social media. I compare myself to this. But if you look at how people learn, they learn by mimicking or idolizing or wanting to pick up traits from people who have done it or been through it or are something that they want to aspire to be. And I feel like that's where we get lost. We go and we make it a negative, which gives us a negative result. As where what you've done is you've turned that comparison into a positive. And you've gone, I'm going to compare myself to this person, but in a healthy manner, be around them, try and pick up on some of their habits and their behaviors. And that's a big takeaway for a lot of people, is it all starts with that mindset. Yeah. That conscious becomes that subconscious, and then that subconscious becomes your reality.
Yeah, and that, I suppose that comes back to like the whole ego chat. Like you have to push your ego down and be like, oh, hey Michael, how do I cycle a bar as fast as you do? Or, like how do you hang on? Like I remember one day I thought I was doing hook grip for ages and Sean's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, hook grip. He's like, nah, I was doing it all wrong. And then after that I could cycle a bar because I could hang on. Like you just have to push your ego down, ask questions, ask people that have a better training age. You guys have talked about it, like people that have more experience, asking them what they're doing, watching what they're doing when on the bar, their fingers over, they're crossed, all those little things. I think you have to really check your ego for you to get better. I mean, that's if you're into getting better. There's a lot of people that are happy staying stagnant.
They're stuck in the rat race.
Yeah.
Of life.
Well, I think that covers off our episode 31 very well. The ego efficacy and unraveling the power and pitfalls of self-identity. Thank you for joining us, Byron, and we'll hopefully hear you listening to us on the next episode.